Hello, everybody. Welcome to a kind of a special little live stream. I'll have a guest. I'll introduce him on in a minute, but let me go through my normal spiel to get everything ready. Welcome to Break the Cycle with DSD. I am your host, Duane. I am not a therapist, nor am I an attorney. I'm an individual, much like you, who has gone through a tough experience where I developed some tips and techniques that I use to help me get my life back, to minimize the damage of a toxic ex, help strengthen relationship with my kids, and just get my life back on track. Remember, only a licensed professional can diagnose somebody with a personality disorder, so be careful throwing around the terms. When you do that, you risk your own credibility, and that is the one thing that we have in this experience is our credibility. So don't give it away just to try to tell everyone that you figured your ex out. If you like what's going on here and you want to support the channel, consider becoming a channel member. You can do that by scrolling down and looking for the join button. And when you do that, you get special badges, custom emojis, your name listed in the credits, access to member-only events, and a special member-only Discord that we can hang out and talk on. If you want to get a text notification whenever I go live, like today, text DSDLIVE to 1-844-598-0012. That's DSDLIVE, all one word. 844-598-0012. And I am going to attempt to have the phone lines on so we can field questions to today's guest. If you want to do that, you can dial in at 1-424-373-5483 or 1-424-DSD-LIVE. If you're outside of the United States and you want to use the web interface, scroll down in the video description. You'll see a link. From there, you'll be able to use your computer or your mobile device to dial into the show. One thing I will just say about the dial-in is there is a little bit of a delay, so sometimes you'll hear me talk over people or people talk over me. We're not being rude to each other. It's just one of those technical issues that just adds a little bit of complexity into the thing. And on that, I am really excited to introduce today my guest, who is John Steinbeck from Brainwashing Children. Hey, John, how you doing today?
Great, Duane. By the way, thanks for all your help today. If your audience only knew what we had to do to get this working, but thanks again. You did it.
That's funny on that. We were planning to do this actually 2 hours ago. We were planning to be live 2 hours ago. We ran into some technical difficulties. I think apparently it looks like we got it all worked out. But for people who don't know, John runs the Brainwashing Children Facebook group. It's got about 40,000 followers with about 1.5 million views. He's also got a companion YouTube channel that's slowly growing. And John's focused on helping basically parents deal with parental alienation and how to really restore relationships when they've gone south. So every time someone calls me or has a question where they're like, I'm trying to figure out how to get along with rebuild my relationship with my 18, 19, 20-year-old child, John, you're always the guy I go to. But if you want to just tell a little bit about yourself for people who haven't heard you before, go ahead and tell us about yourself.
You bet. I'll make it really fast. I was alienated from my son. He was alienated from me for about 4 years, and I decided to fight back because the legal system didn't help me. The so-called professionals in the mental health industry didn't help me. So I read all the books I could, and those didn't really help. So I just used some of the things I read from those books and just came up with what I thought were common sense tactics. For example, is I put a list on a piece of paper of all the things the alienator was doing, and I just on the opposite side wrote, okay, well, I'm gonna do the opposite. So I figured the best way to counteract this is get aggressive in fighting back, learning all I can, and then being the opposite human that I was portrayed as being, the opposite father that I was being portrayed as. I decided, the best way to counteract that would be to create a big disconnect in my son's head between what he's being taught about me and told about me and what he's actually experiencing. So I wrote my book, Brainwashing Children, about 10 years ago, and then jumped into the social media scene, mostly on Facebook. I'm trying to get a grip on YouTube and follow you, but it's been a great helping other people recover. And I'm very much an optimistic person in this field. A lot of people say, no, you can't recover. I disagree. You can. Every situation, of course, is different, and the timelines vary. Mine, I think, was pretty quick in a matter of 3 or 4 years. But yeah, so that's why I'm here. I'm a big advocate in and
I,
not removing children from their fathers and mothers' lives unjustifiably.
I pulled up on the screen, so anybody who's watching the video, you'll see the book that he's talking about. Uh, and, and one of the things I just wanted to, you kind of touched on it, but I just want to just mention is your situation. I mean, we've talked. I mean, John and I have been friends for a few years now, I guess, now that I think about it. But this has not been easy. I mean, this wasn't one of those things where you figured it out and you just, everything you did worked fine. There were a lot of ups and downs, and you've been able to systematically, with very targeted action, basically, to reconnect with your son and repair that relationship. And I mean, I'm sure there were times where you thought, oh my God, there's no way, it's too far gone and I won't be able to pull it back. Right.
Yeah. There's one point where my son was about 12 or 13, all the drama in his life from my visitations with him on the alternating weekends. I just said to him, say, look, I know that you love me and I love you, and I just need a break and I need you to break. So when you want to see me, you reach out to me. And it was about 2.5, 3 months, but 3.5, about that time later, he reached out to me. So I did need that emotional pullback. And as it turned out, in my situation, it worked great for both of us.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. There was somebody who just the other day was talking about that. It was a mom getting alienated from the kids, and they said, okay, fine, I'll take a break. And I think 3 or 4 months later, the kids still hadn't reached out to him. And if you're in that situation where you're not, let's say you had done that and 2 months later he hadn't reached back out to you, what approach would you have taken to try to keep the dialogue going?
That's a great question. In that situation, I remember thinking about that. If he wouldn't reach out within 3 or 4 months, I would ping him. So even though you give them the reins, in the end, you have to be the adult in the room and reach out, whether it's once a month, once every other month. You got to have something. Just going, completely cold for, let's say, 6 months or a year, I would definitely not advise that, because then it fits in the narrative that you don't care.
Oh yeah, no, that's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one thing is I've advised people in that situation to where, you got to be really careful how you respond, right? So like if you do reach out, you can't. What my thought, and I'll ask your opinion of this. You don't want to go, oh, I drove past a place we used to go and I think about you so much, because in my mind it's like those communications cannot even have the appearance of guilt or trying to tug at the heartstrings, because it's like the kids are primed for that type of response, right?
I have never told my son that I miss him. And before you guys jump out of your seats, here's why. When you say, oh, I miss you so much, it pulls in their heartstrings, like you said. I did not want that emotional, that type of resonance in him. So I use these words. I say, hey, had a great time with you. I can't wait to see you again. I use that kind of language because I knew that the whole I miss you, even though it's true, it just makes them feel guilty and it puts them back in the middle again. So that's one tip that I teach, is stop using the word. Of course, they know you miss them if you're reaching out to them. So don't use that word, because it triggers more double-minded thinking in their brain of having to be in the middle and face one parent on one side and the other parent on the other. So I don't advise using that word, for instance.
No, I think it's a great point. I remember, I dealt with a lot of this as a child in my own life with the alienation I had with my dad. And I was primed for him to say the wrong thing. Anytime he said anything, which he didn't really talk too negative. Later he got more angry towards my mom and made some comments that probably weren't so helpful, but it's really bizarre because we're stuck as a parent. You're stuck in this mode where you have to really kind of thread the needle, so to speak, in a very specific way, because your own actions and words can just derail everything. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's very true. And all since you're under the microscope, one small slip up you say can really be a setback because
Oh
remember they're
yeah.
twisting everything that you say to begin with. So you can be the ultra perfect parent, and there's no such thing, and make a small little mistake or show up 5 minutes late, and now they claim that you don't really care. If you really cared, you'd be there 5 minutes early every time. Just things like that. It's nonstop emotional aggression and emotional abuse on the behalf of that parent doing this. It's just wrong. My heart bleeds for those kids that have to deal with this because it ends up affecting them on one way or the other. There's no such thing as a kid that receives all this emotional abuse that comes out at 18 as
Yeah.
a completely normal human being. It just does not happen.
Well, and I'm sure you relate to this, is that kids that go through this are going to be emotionally delayed anyway. So your 18, 19-year-old child is not emotionally going to be an 18 or 19-year-old equivalent. They're probably going to be 14 or 15. They're going to need a little bit more time to to finish cooking, so to speak, before they're.
As Chris Godinez says, sorry for interrupting.
No,
as
go
Chris
for it.
Godinez says, it's called fleas of the abuser. They get
Yeah.
fleas from the abuser, so they are going to have some of their traits, unfortunately. And even when they recover, when they, it's. I mean, I'm sorry if somebody's emotionally abused weekly, daily, monthly, there is going to be unfortunately some after effects, and that's sad in itself. Which is why I call this kind of abuse so damn evil. It is evil.
It is. I mean, because the problem is that you're hurting obviously the other parent, but more importantly, a person that's doing this is hurting their own kid. They're setting that child up to repeat these patterns, potentially, go into another relationship and do the exact same thing and have a whole nother generation or a whole nother group of people that are affected by this. I mean, that's why I think it's so important what you're doing with the information you're out there to try to help. I mean, and with what I'm doing too, is to break this cycle, because I think there is a way. I think there is a way to reconnect with our children, to heal those wounds that have happened, and break the damn cycle so it just doesn't keep going on. It keep repeating.
And I think the odds are really good when one of the two parents is not personality disordered or have a personality disorder, and that person is calm and, like I said earlier, they're the opposite of the crazy ex. I think the odds are very good. Not in all cases, of course. And I don't like hearing those cases of people that have been alienated for 15, 20, 25 years. But I think if you do the right things over time, children have a need to be connected with their biological parents, especially if you keep pinging them, with an email here and there or a call, or, hey, hey, I saw your dad the other day, and he said he was he was asking questions about you, stuff like that. So yeah, you just can't give up. That's my biggest tip, I guess, in everything I teach, is that you can't just throw in the towel. Take a break for a while, like I did, but don't just throw in the towel, because now you just feed completely the narrative that you don't give a crap about them.
You know what, John, that's exactly the situation my dad was in. He was so frustrated, and for his own emotional sanity, he started putting hard blocks between us, with my relationship with him. And the way it looked to me is that he didn't care, that he didn't, the stuff that was being said, like, oh, it's so sad your dad's such a piece of garbage, that he doesn't care about you, that he only cares about, insert whatever thing he happens to be doing at the time. And as a child, even as I started becoming an adult, it with that vacuum of information, or lack of information, I guess, or interaction, it just, in my mind, it's like, oh, okay, it's true. Now, the crazy part is even with that, I kept reaching out, wanting to have a relationship with him. And, unfortunately, it took me to go through my own situation to basically, like I was talking about before, repeat the damn cycle. And now I'm living, at one point, I'm looking at it, realizing I'm living my dad's life, dealing with the same crap. Finally, at like 42, maybe 44 years old, I had an epiphany where I'm like, holy crap, I now understand everything my dad did. I mean, didn't necessarily, I wish he would have made different decisions, but I understood
Sure.
why he did it,
Hmm.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, and and fathers aren't, I would say, naturally gifted at doing the right things in the parenting things in this form of abuse. We need help. We need somebody like you, somebody like me to give some answers. Other people on the internet, Chris Godinez, I think, is great on
Oh yeah.
YouTube for getting some solutions and advice. And honestly, you're always going to have setbacks. I can think of right now 2 things that I said that I should have never said. But hey, I'm human. I make mistakes, and in the end, I just kept forging ahead, and knowing that one day all my efforts are going to pay off. That's the kind of attitude I recommend people have.
Well, and that's, see, and here's the hard part. It's holding on to that hope that it is going to pay off when you're seeing evidence or you're seeing actions that make you question it, makes it so tough. I mean, I know even for me at the early parts on it, when I was doing this, I used to think, oh my God, maybe when my kids are 30, they'll realize what I was trying to do. But it does seem to happen sooner than we think, don't you think?
Yeah, I think for people that are really concerned about it and they stay in the game, that the narcissistic X wins the battles, but in the end, we win the war. I really believe that. And keep in mind, the child has a spirit that wants to be connected with you deep down, despite all the lies. Even a parent that's in jail, kids have that same type of feeling for. It's just not natural to permanently, forever discard a parent. Like I said, it does happen, but I think it happens very rarely. And I think our biggest mistake is checking out completely. And if we don't do that, and we keep, as I say, pinging them through friends or through other family members, let them know that you're there. And if you don't know where they are, that's a whole other topic we could talk about another time. If you really don't know where they are at all on this planet. But alienation is a sense of kidnapping. So just like you'd go to the police and you'd make the efforts to get your kidnapped child back, you got to do the same thing with parental alienation, for sure.
I got another question for you. Hopefully I can remember it enough to where if the person watches this, they'll hear it. But there's a gentleman I've been working with who's older, son's in college, and alienation is taken hold, but there's still communications. But the communications typically are whenever he talks to his son, the son is just poking him in the eye. It's like, Dad, you're always talking about these old times, and you're bringing up things that I don't want to hear about, and you're horrible, and when you have, see, to me in that situation, the fact that there's still a dialogue is a good sign. But if you're in that mode where it's just really contentious, and everything, every time you talk to him, the kid's basically just taking their finger and jabbing it in your eye, what would you recommend someone to do? How do you try to turn that around?
You're 95% of the way there if they still talk to you. If you still see them, I mean, you are so far ahead of the game. So many parents out there watching this will go, man, if I only had that situation. No, you're there. Here's what my first advice is: quit talking about the alienation, quit talking about the other parent. No negative comments at all about anything. Say, hey, how was your week? What's going on? Ask them questions. Here's another tip for you. Narcissistic parents who we're dealing with do not ask questions. It's all about themselves. So by you being that parent that's inquisitive, for example, I asked my nephew the other day, because I don't know anything about TikTok. I say, hey, show me this. I don't understand it. I know it's the latest craze. So he spent 5 minutes showing me TikTok. Things like that, engage them and don't talk about the drama. There are so many things even today I'd love to ask my son questions about, but I just don't bring it up, because if he doesn't bring it up, then I don't think it's value added to our relationship to bring it up. I'm all about having a good time and creating a good memory to where he thinks, you know what, I want to see my dad again. And that's what I created over the last, 10 years or so.
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, and the reality is that, see, I think the thing that people forget is that kids, they have a lot of guilt and shame associated with this. I mean, if they've been alienated and they feel bad about another parent, being reminded of it or having it brought up every time makes it to where it's uncomfortable. You know, I mean, and so I think that's kind of the catalyst to where you can get yourself into trouble, because if it's like, okay, well, I want to talk to my dad, but every time I talk to my dad, I feel like crap. So it's just easier to believe the narrative and believe he's a scumbag and minimize contact. I think.
Yep. You have to have. I'm sorry, I had crosstalk with you. Yeah, you have to be the safe house. Remember, an alienator's house is a house of drama and chaos. You're the opposite. You're a safe house. Even though there's things that you're dying to ask, dying to get off your chest, that's not the venue. Your venue is peace. Peace in the house, because that's the one thing that these parents that do this, there's not peace in the house. Look how they lash out at not just you, but everybody else in their orb, from school administrators to a waitress who doesn't get the order right. They're not nice people. So by being contrasting that in that way, you really come out ahead. And then check my battery, make sure it's not 9.
So what I think I just want to mention on that is, I think one thing that you also have to remember, especially if you're dealing with somebody that you either is diagnosed with a personality disorder or you strongly suspect. I mean, if they follow the pattern of behavior, let them destroy themselves. You know, there are so many times where, I mean, I've had some like in my situation, I've had conversations with my son, because he's a little bit older, so he's asking different questions. And I'm not necessarily disparaging, saying, oh, your mom's a piece of crap. It's like, well, this is the type of stuff she does. And then she keeps proving it. Let these people prove it to themselves. I mean, like you said, I mean, they don't really care about their children. They're accessories. They're not invested in their interests and whatnot. So allow, like you said, John, just allow your environment to be that stable, peaceful environment that they can just relax and they don't have to worry about judgment or any of those things, and let the other parent show their ass, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. And that contrast, kids even as young as 5 and 6 can sense that. Kids can sense drama in a household. They can sense peace in a household. So just that kind of stuff. I felt at the time that was so good for him. And I just knew that down the road, this will pay dividends, because kids have intuition. They have that, God-given sense, or whatever term you want to call it, their spidey sense. Kids are smart. They get it. And by refusing to talk about the drama, there are exceptions to that rule, but generally refusing to talk about the drama, they know now, oh, I get to spend this weekend with mom or dad. Like deep down, they're like, this is going to be awesome.
A break.
Because
it's going to be a break.
It's going to be well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Let me see. I'm going to look at a couple of the comments that are coming in. Oh, and for anybody who is watching this live, let me hit the right button here. The phone lines are open. If you want to ask John a question, call in 1-424-373-5483 or 1-424-DSD-LIVE, and you can talk about your specifics. Let me see. I'm going to punch this in, or actually I'll leave that up. And let me see. There was a comment I wanted to grab. Cindy says, yes, jabbing you in the eye is from pain. Many times it's misdirected at those who know deep down inside still love them. And very true. I mean, I would say the other thing that's kind of interesting about this is it seems like the safer parent or the non-toxic parent, the kids lash out at more. And it really seems like it's because it feels safer to do it, which sucks. It sucks for the target.
Because they've learned that. Right, because they've learned that when they speak back to that the alienator, that there's a price to pay.
There is
it's
a
hell
price
they're
to
going to pay. Yeah, so even though it makes no sense, why would they treat someone that way who doesn't treat them that way? Yeah, that's basically what happens, and the comment is correct. They transfer that anger on you because you're the safe parent.
Katrina says, that's beautiful. The child has a spirit that naturally wants to be connected to the other parent. And it's absolutely true. And we have to kind of remember that and keep that as a guiding principle, I think.
Correct.
Now the flip side to that, the other half of that is they are also still going to want to have a connection with that other that we consider toxic parent. And I'm sure in your situation, just like with my kids, I'm sure your son probably still has a relationship with his mom. and that's okay.
Yeah. And to that end, I mean, every Christmas is with her, and I've never complained about that, because with this whole thing, you have to pick your battles, and that's just not one battle I've ever wanted to pick. But that goes to your point. Absolutely. I mean, and that's another reason why I've never smeared her. I've never, spoken about her with disgust or anything like that. It's because that's his mom. You know, you always have to honor that parent as being their parent, no matter what they do. Even if that parent ends up in jail, you still don't sit down there and sit the child down and start smearing that parent because they're in jail. Instead, you say things like, apparently your dad made some really bad choices. See how that's different than denigrating them and smearing them and taking away their honor.
You're right, man. And I'll tell you, I mean, I didn't necessarily do well in that in the beginning. For me personally, when I saw the alienation starting, and I knew that the whole plan was to get full custody and move out of state to where I'd never basically see the kids again, I was terrified, and I was trying to actively fight the narrative that was being set against me. And in retrospect now, I realize that had I not done that and just focused on building the best relationship and the most stability, it would have paid off much sooner. Because of what I was trying to do, the kids felt more stress. They felt more anxiety. So it actually just made everything worse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you dealt with that. It sounds like you didn't have, you had a better handle on that than I did at the beginning.
No, I had two anger outbursts. One was when the judge, against my lawyer's recommendation, interviewed our son when he was 10 or 11 as to what are his preferences, even though that's not even under Texas state law. I live in Texas. And when I found out, because I had him afterwards, when I found out what he told the judge, I blew a gasket. And obviously I apologized pretty quickly thereafter for my outburst, but hey, we're human, man. And we're being attacked. So don't beat up yourself when you make mistakes. In the end, the child, I'm convinced of this, the child or children will over time see who the normal range parent is and who the parent that's not normal range.
Yeah. One thing I'd also mention that's kind of tough on this is that kids don't understand the significance of what they're saying, right? So I'm sure what your son said, today he probably, well, you don't even want to bring it up, but at the time for a 10-year-old or a 13-year-old to understand the significance of appeasing the other parent to tell them what they want to hear, not realizing what the consequences are.
Good point. He had absolutely no idea what he was saying. And that's why it was so unfair for me to react the way I did. But it's just,
what's interesting just thinking about it, I remember I did an interview with Dizzy Lerner from, I can't remember what the name of the documentary was, but one of the things that came up in that is that his daughter had actually said in that interview, whenever she was questioned and said, "Oh, I don't want to be around my dad," she didn't believe it, but just said it because she thought she had to. So I think what people need to realize too is if something like that happens, and it feels just devastating because you feel like you've been rejected or you feel like you've lost your kid, you have to keep in mind that these kids are going through torture. They're basically, they're just trying to survive, and they don't have the emotional maturity to understand how to best help themselves because they're too young.
Yeah. And that's why it's so abusive for them to be forced into that position by one of the parents. It's just awful. Keep them out of it. It's not their fault the marriage or the relationship didn't last. Keep them out of it.
All right, I'm looking for another comment. Cindy says, yes, a relationship with a toxic parent, but not always. So when a child gets older and finally gets free, quote unquote, from the toxic one, she says I'm not sure. Oh, that was her case. And I hate to say, when they become older, they can come back, but sometimes it does take them being able to not be living in that environment, to not have to constantly be appeasing a toxic parent, to be able to have the freedom, I guess, to reach out and show the other parents some attention. Well, because then they can keep it private, right? I mean, they don't have to turn around and say, oh, I went and saw, dad or mom the other day.
Think of it like this. It's like a cult they're in. So how
Good
do you
point.
get somebody out of a cult? You have to remove them from the cult. That's the antidote to cults. And parental alienation is like a cult type thing happening to them. So the further they end up away one day from that toxic parent, the more quickly they recover. And what I've seen all the time, if they're living in the same household up until 25, yeah, you face an uphill battle, much more so than if the child moved out of the house and was living, let's say, a couple cities or states away.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I, and the thing is on that, I think if you're in that point where you're trying to rebuild it, you just have to take it slow. You can't expect overnight success. I mean, it would be outstanding if it did happen that way. And you just have to, like John, you were just saying, I mean, just keep showing up in an effective way, right? I mean, you don't want to be like texting every day, or you got to gauge it. You got to measure it, right?
Yeah, you don't want to be a nuisance. You don't want to show up to their high school when they're a senior and embarrass them in front of all their friends. Remember me?
Yeah,
I'm your dad.
exactly.
You're supposed to be excited to see me. I mean, I've had a parent tell me he did that. I'm like, no, you cannot do that. You have to, like you said, baby steps, a little bit at a time.
So let me see if there's any, can you see the comments on your end or not? I'm not sure if you can.
Nope.
Not really? Okay. Let's see. Angela says, core trauma from our narc parents created trauma bonding and codependency, even if it was done silently, which is really true because it normally is. Surreal feeling, eggshells, it leaves you feeling unsafe, uncomfortable, and in danger. And the thing I would add on that is it's a prime. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can see the comments now. That's a great, great comment. You can tell she's lived through it before.
Oh, yeah.
Trauma bonding, codependency. Yeah. Fear, obligation, guilt. They throw those at our children.
Oh, yeah.
FOG. Fear, obligation, guilt.
Oh, I hadn't heard that one. That's good. The other thing, what I was going to say on this is that primes you with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. You'll get to the point later in life that you'll have these emotional reactions or emotional flashbacks and not even understand why. And it's, see, that's what's so insidious about this crap is that it creates so much damage that a person or a child takes into adulthood that then they have to unpack, or they're going to relive it and they're going to have, bad relationships. And the other sad thing about this is that if you're raised like that and you do happen to run into somebody that's a really good, loving, good person, good boundaries, no red flags, it won't feel natural because you're used to chaos and game playing, and it won't feel a lot of people sabotage good relationships because of that childhood, early childhood trauma. It doesn't feel normal. It doesn't feel natural.
Yeah. Well said. That's their normal. So that's what they gravitate to, even if the logic in their brain tells them that's not normal and that this is a good thing. It's really messed up how that works. I don't even quite understand it, but yeah, it's just one of those, after effects of all the abuse. There's so many different ways it affects them the rest of their lives.
I'm going to grab this one from Jonathan. It said, I'm assuming he says my son or child stopped calling me dad. It took me a while to notice. One thing I just want to throw out there, and this is the other part that's really tough about these situations. Even if you have the best marriage in the world, you guys are the most stable, wonderful people in the world, teenagers can be buttheads, and they can do things that just try your patience. I mean, I have mine. It's almost entertaining because there's times where mine will say, we'll be like, oh, I love you, daddy. And then, I'll say some, then, 2 days later, it'll be like, hey, I love you. And it's just like, meh, that gives me that go to hell look and walks out of the car. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's parental. I mean, that it's the evil ex, doing the pulling the strings. Sometimes it's just kids being kids too. So
That's correct.
What would you recommend in that situation if you had a person who said, hey, my son is now, it won't even call me dad anymore. How would you address that?
The connection got faded the last 5 seconds. Can you repeat that, please?
No, I was saying if you were in that situation where somebody was telling you, hey, my 13, 14, 15-year-old kid is now won't even call me dad anymore, is calling me Bill. How would you address that, or what recommendations would you have for that?
I don't like that at all. I'd have to think that through on the name calling thing. The overarching principle in my mind is pick your battles. You can't nip them on everything. If that's the only thing that they're doing, I would tell them, hey, I know it's cool for you to be calling me by my first name, but can you please, when you're at least here, by them, you're giving the out of, okay, over the back of the other place, they can still call you by your name, John. But when you're here, can you please, just call me dad, and take it from there. I don't believe in being a pushover to teenagers, even when they're
it's a bad
coming from a narcissistic household. So plus, it gets to the boundary thing. They're not used to boundaries. So that's a boundary right there. If you tell them, hey, can you please, and you said it nicely. And then if they continue to ignore it, well, let them suffer some consequences. Remember, all the mud's being thrown at you anyways. So why not just do the right parenting technique?
That's funny. I love that. The thing I'll add on to that, or the thought I'll say on that, and you mentioned at the beginning, is you really have to pick your battles. You have to look at, in my opinion, everything you look at the long game. Look at it from a battle/war perspective. You can pick every battle and you can win battles, but it'll ultimately cost you the entire war. So you really have to decide. And we are presented with double bind after double bind. In other words, there is no good solution. You let the kid get away with too much, and there's a consequence for that. You push too hard, you push them right back to the other parent. I mean, it's
I call it emotional. It's emotional warfare.
It is. And I think go ahead.
I was just going to say, and it's so unnecessary.
Oh my God. Yes.
I've got another kid, not the subject of alienation. I've taught because when I tell both my kids this, or teach both of them, they go, wait a minute, I thought you have one. Now I've got two kids. One was alienated, one was not. And I've been teaching them from the age of about 8 or 9. There are two types of drama in this world: necessary and unnecessary. Necessary is, of course, car accident, or someone's dying, or something. Hey, we need to solve this now. That's necessary drama. But all this stuff that we're dealing with, everyone, is unnecessary drama. It's such BS, because it's all it is abusing the kids. And for what? To what end? Well, we know to what end. It's all about power and control. But sorry for my rant there. It's unnecessary drama.
You're spot on with that, and I just want to piggyback on that. Is it makes it so much harder than it needs to be, right? I mean, if an ex wasn't hell bent on winning and making you lose, and a lot of times I don't even think it's necessarily that. It's that they only think about themselves. So in their mind, you don't exist. So they can just pretend you don't exist, and then there's just cascade of catastrophe that follows behind it. But I'm sure everyone watching, and I'm sure you would agree, that it's like, if you could just stop the stupid effing games and work together, and the kid would be so much better off, prepared for life, that it would be calmer. Okay, you guys didn't get along, but it's like every time I see a story where it's just this shit show, for lack of a better word, for years and years and years, it's like, it's so stupid. I mean, it's just, like you mentioned, John, you said, you have two, and your other child, there's no issue. So so for you got an example of how it should work, and the success as a result of that, and then how it doesn't work and the consequences of it. And here's the thing. I would imagine, let me ask you this. I would imagine that with the mother of your other child, it's been not necessarily easy, but comparatively, it's made
Mm-hmm.
things just so much more easy probably in the last 10 years,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, we worked so well together. We co-wrote a book called "The 10 Commandments of Divorced Parenting." I mean, it's just a very small book, short book, but it's
That's
it's
awesome.
like 10 things that we did together, and um, you can't say that divorce has no impact on children. It does,
Well, it does.
but I think, yeah, we've worked well together, and our daughter, for instance, has never seen us fight ever, never seen us disrespect each other. And trust me, we've had some major disagreements. We've even
Yeah.
been through the court system, but guess what? We never let her know about it. So yeah, goes back to the contrast thing that I keep talking about. So yeah, yeah, alien parents are good examples of bad examples, and I'm telling you, you have to fight back. You can't lay down, and over time, you will get some semblance of a relationship back, and that's what you, Duane, and I are here to help with, and to um, give an ear to, and tell you guys there's light at the end of the tunnel for sure. There wasn't my case, and there was in so many cases.
And the thing I want to say on that is your ex didn't change. There is light at the end of the tunnel, but it's not because she was held accountable in the court system or,
Mm-hmm.
exposed in the town
Mm-hmm.
square. It
Mm-hmm.
got better in spite of a person actively working to try to sabotage everything, right?
Correct. Yep. Again, how do you get somebody out of a cult? Is you remove them from the cult, and you remove them from the leader, and they actually get to see the real world. And that's kind of what you're doing. They're on their own at some point when they're adult, and they're away from the daily, beat downs, and that's your way in. And back to also the spirit that they have deep down, all those little things. I mean, it's pretty complex, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I have
want to
hope for most people out there.
I no, I'm glad you said that because I do too. It's just but you have to make the right decisions. If you don't, if you lash out, if you fight every battle, if you pick your battles
Mm-hmm.
incorrectly, you can
Mm-hmm.
destroy the relationship with your kids and you could ultimately
Mm-hmm.
make it to where you never have a relationship. I mean, so it's not one of those things you have to work towards it and you have to be strategic, I guess is a good way to say it, on what you do, right?
Yeah, if you come in with guns blazing, hiring all the
You're going to
biggest
lose.
hotshot lawyers and just go I mean, yeah, that's just no, I don't recommend that at all. Because now you're coming across as a very aggressive, hostile parent, even if what you're fighting for is a lot of good things like visitation. Now they just don't like you.
Yeah.
So be likable.
You
That
know,
was also on my side. I knew that I was
yeah, that's a good
likable
point.
to him, and by being a likable dad, that one day it's going to outweigh the lies told against me.
I was talking to a friend of mine a few weeks ago back. His ex is out of control and bad, doing just doing all kinds of stuff. And he was going to go for full custody. He was like, you know what? There's been enough patterns of behavior that I can mash the button. And the thing that I always tell people is you don't underestimate a toxic narcissistic person because I was talking to him, he mentioned that, and I was talking to him, a few weeks back, and I was asking him how it went. And he goes, "Well, I backed off because what happened is, as soon as the mom in this situation realized what was happening, the focus pivoted to the kids, guilt and shame to the kids. So the kids are like, Daddy, you're trying to take me away from mommy. She's going to be alone. All that stuff." And he's like, "Oh crap, I lost."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like
Mm-hmm.
this stuff seems straightforward, and oftentimes it's not. So you have to be really careful, what you do and how you do it. I think your comment about being, I guess kind of what you're saying is do it with integrity, right? I mean,
Right, and control your emotions. And for us men, that's the hardest thing,
oh, it
is
is.
to control our anger when this
Yep.
is going on, because it's such unnecessary BS drama that's being whirled about in our own kids' heads, and you just want to stop it. But you got to watch your anger. Get some trusted people around you that are, calm heads, and ask, hey, what do you guys think we should do on this? And that's also working in your favor long term. Is you have family. I'm assuming most of you guys have extended family trees. That's another way that's going to help lure them back when they realize they're not just spending time with you, but there's also spending time with your new, let's say, spouse or half sisters, brothers, or whatever, aunts and uncles, grandparents. That's also very nice to have if you do have that on your side.
I'm going to grab this comment from Hami, and it says, my malignant narc wife has conditioned my 11-year-old girl not to be friends with me in just a couple of years. So I do little things like write a note in her diary to reassure her of my unconditional love. And I think he's saying with its wife, I'm assuming that's happening while they're still married, but I think it's just, that's a good example of just the little things just to kind of reinforce that, that you're there and that you do care, to counter that narrative that you don't, right?
Yeah. Yeah, man, those little things matter. That's a good one. I wouldn't put that in someone's diary, but little notes around, or just little comments of,
oh yeah, good point.
Hey, I'm thinking about you. Like I said, I never use the word miss because it creates an emotional tension on their heart. I just say, hey, had a great time thinking about you. Have a great week at school. Yeah. I'll see you next weekend or whatever. Just very, what's a good word to describe it? Just very, blasé, nonchalant, just non-emotionally heavy statements.
Yeah. I'm going to grab this other one from HC9. It says, at DSD, what if they're calling you dad, but still also the ex is making the kids call someone else daddy also? What's your thought on that?
Well, first of all, it's very mean. It's very abusive. As long as they're calling you dad, that's a win in my case. Yeah. And they know deep down that that's a stepdad and not their real dad. So on that one, it sucks, but I would not pick a battle on that as long as they're calling you dad.
The only caveat on that, I would say, potentially for picking your battles, if you're early on and you could have it written into the court order that no one else is going to be called daddy. I mean, if you could get it in there, but then even if you do that, then if it starts happening, then you have to make the decision of, are you going to go back and try to do a contempt charge on it? Yep. And you got to decide if that's worth it. But John, I think you're right. Correct. I mean, I think it really, and I say this a lot to people, it really boils down to, minus everything else that's happening, what is happening with you and your kid? When it's just you, the two of you by yourself, you don't have an external influence, across the street or whatever. That is the gauge on how you're doing. And if that is okay, like you said, if they're still calling you dad when it's just the two of you, you're winning. And you need to recognize that and you need to focus on that.
Yeah, I totally agree. If they're calling you dad, mom, that's great. If they're calling someone else dad, you don't like it. I don't like that feeling either. But it's just, what? I'm not going to fight that. He's calling me dad, so I'm good to go.
The crazy part is I don't necessarily like my ex, but I would never, I know I'm not married or anything like that, but I am in a long-term relationship. I would never say, call this other person mommy or, whatever, I would just, it's like in my situation, it's Debbie. You call them Debbie. It's not, it blows my mind that people would even do that, because it just seems like it's so far out of context for me that I would never even consider it.
It's two things. It's boundaries and moral integrity.
Yep.
You've got it. And she doesn't.
I'm looking at, so Hakuna says, what is the best strategy when parental alienation is 100%? How to break the cycle when the alienated parents has items such as protections orders against them? Oh, that's a good question. So effectively, if you've gotten caught up in the silver bullet machine and you're currently under a protective order, what in the world do you do? That's a really good question.
Again, Duane, I've got a weak connection on my end. Ask the question. Summarize it again. You got garbled.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Test. Okay. So the question is if you're in the early stages of this and you've been hit with a protective order and a stay away order, what exactly are you supposed to do whenever you are effectively ordered to stay away from the ex and the children?
Well, it depends. I mean, if it's a temporary one, yeah, you don't want to do anything that gets you thrown in jail,
Right.
or legal jeopardy. But I'm assuming that's not what she means as far as a protective order that's lasts forever.
It's hard to
If
say.
that's the case,
I don't know
I would
if you could
get a good
clarify
lawyer. I
that.
can answer that.
So my take on that is like what John said. If you have a protective order, and I made a video about this a little while ago, do not violate that court order. And because the surefire way to get yourself in jail or to turn that temporary order into a permanent order is to violate it. And your first focus has got to be getting that thrown out as quickly as possible. If you make a mistake and it turns into a permanent order, then your next course of action would be to go to court and get some type of visitation, even if it's supervised, so that you have some type of reoccurring connection. Now, we all know that if you only get a couple hours with your kid, you're not going to be able to undo parental alienation. But at that stage, what you're looking for is you're looking for some type of connection, just so that the child isn't believing the false narrative that you don't care about them. Because I guarantee you, in that situation, the other parent isn't saying, "Oh, pumpkin, your dad's not coming to see you because there's a stay away order because of that outburst he had." It's more than likely going to be, "I don't know why your dad won't try to reach out to you. I mean, he should. I mean, any parent who cared would, that's more than likely what's going to happen." So that's anything you want to add on to that?
No, I agree.
All right, let me see if I can see anything. We're kind of running up on a hard break, right? You got to get out of here in a little bit. I think we're.
Yeah, I think my camera is going to die here in the next 5 minutes.
All right, so all right, let me see if I can find a quick last one. I'm scrolling around. If you see anything that you think you want to hit, let me know. If you can see it. Let's see here. I'm trying to find. There was one I wanted to hit. Let me see if this is it. Nope, I don't think it's that one. See, sometimes I forget to grab these and highlight them. Well, you know what? I think that covers it. I know this was kind of impromptu. I appreciate everybody hanging out. John, if you want to tell some people about how to find out more about you so they can go follow you on socials, where can they find you?
Yeah, on YouTube, it's Brainwashing Children. On Facebook, it's Brainwashing Children. On Amazon, my book is Brainwashing Children. So that's how you find me. And if you just Google parental alienation in YouTube, my stuff shows up in the top of the fold, bottom of the fold. And I also talk about Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which unfortunately I had to deal with fighting that as well. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Facebook is where I'm at mostly. I post a lot of memes on there about parental alienation and about narcissistic parents. And thanks for the chance today to talk to you finally, and let's do more of these, Duane, now that I finally got my live streaming set up.
Absolutely. So on that, what I want to do as I roll this out, if the button actually works, is thanks everybody for hanging out with us. And I really want to say thank you to all the channel members who help keep this channel going. They're scrolling across the screen because I figured out how to do that today. So thank you so much on that. Guys, make sure you go check out John's stuff. Give him a subscribe, give him a like, and let's keep the awareness going. All right, take care.